Good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity, the podcast where we look at data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments upon it. I'm your host, Preston Proctor. Hey, the season's not on, so what am I doing? This isn't part of the season. I guess it's kind of the silly season is what a lot of people call it. But what I promised and decided to do is to go back and look at the awards, the NHL Awards for 2024. I did the long-winded review of the last 30 award years. And when I finally got all the analysis done and the podcast, the awards had already come out, I didn't include them. So I want to go back and take a look at that. I'm also going to do a little bit of a Predators update on what's been going on with the team. Again, I don't work for the team, so the little bit I've been able to discern by looking at websites, you guys probably all know it. Or haven't taken the time, in which case you can listen to that part of the show. And then I've always liked the idea of the 3-point system in the NHL. So I want to talk a little bit about that and how that would have changed last season, the little bit that it would have changed. Anyway, so that's what this particular podcast is going to be about. It also happens to be number 32, podcast number 32. He's number 32 in your playbook, but he's number 1 in your heart. I forget what that quote went. I think that's from The Replacements. But anyway, Jonathan Quick, number 32, goaltender for the LA Kings, Conn Smythe winner. Never won the Vezina. Anyway, shout out to Jonathan Quick. We love you, thinking about you. I think you're coming back, going to play for New York again. Too bad you didn't get your name on the cup. Again, that would have been fun. But, maybe this upcoming year, of course, I don't pull for the Rangers. I would like to see Nashville be able to put their names on the cup here in Nashville. That would be a lot of fun. Did get to see Game 6 in 2012 when the Kings won their first Stanley Cup, and Jonathan Quick got the Conn Smythe Trophy. We hung out in the stadium until everybody was done skating on the ice. It was just very emotional, very great. Like to see that for Nashville. Congratulations to Florida. Glad to see Florida win. Did not want to see Edmonton win. Nothing terribly much against Edmonton per se. I'm just tired of Connor McDavid and Connor McDavid story being pushed by the NHL and them kind of putting their thumb on the scale to try to help that along. But anyway, that's what today's podcast is going to be about once I finally get around to it. I thought that Jonathan Quick would be a good segue because the first award to look at is the Vezina Trophy, the one that Jonathan Quick has never won, probably should have won it at least once. I'm going to go in the order I did before in the when I looked at the award bias. I thought that was the easiest way to do it. And then, that gets me right to the Vezina quick. The Selke is another award that, as being a Kings fan, the Selke, the Norris, and the Vezina for me, Drew Doughty, Anze Kopitar, and Jonathan Quick. I mean, enough said. But if you wanted to win one of the subjective awards this year, it would have helped if your first name was Connor. We had 5 awards go to someone named Connor, 4 different Connors at least. But if your name was Connor, like the winner of the Vezina Trophy, Connor Hellebuyck with the Winnipeg Jets. The Vezina is awarded by the club GMs, which is one of the big surprises on the fact that it's so heavily skewed to the Eastern Conference. And I guess I back up a little bit too and say the other thing that's kind of funny about doing this review of the awards after my scathing review of the last 30 award years of the NHL Awards is that the other ones, the bias seemed to be on Buffalo, Boston, and Detroit to win more than anybody, and they didn't win any awards in 2024. I had nothing to do with that. I don't know that they deserved anything, but they didn't win. And the other thing to note is the Western Conference did get 10. The Eastern Conference got 8. The Central Division was the big winner with 7. 4 awards to both of the divisions in the East Coast and 3 to the Pacific. But anyway, yes, so Connor Hellebuyck, Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg did finish second in the Central Division and in winning the Vezina Trophy. Connor did win the Jennings Award as well, the Jennings being the award that goes to the goaltenders that have the lowest goals against. Not goals against average, but goals against. So Connor and Winnipeg did win the Jennings Trophy, so they won the Vezina. During the last 30 years of award years, the same person won the Jennings and the Vezina 10 out of 30 times, so that's a pretty strong indicator. This past year, Florida's Bobrovsky did have a lower goals against average, 237 to 239 for Connor. Not huge. The reason I'm bringing that up, if you didn't listen to my long discussion, is that goals against a number of games played and goals against is kind of the way that the Vezina tends to run. Notable exceptions, go back, listen to my hour-and-a-half long podcast. But in this particular case, Bobrovsky did have a lower goals against average. He played 58 games. Connor played 60. Connor did win the Vezina in 2020. Bobrovsky won the Vezina in 2013 and 2017. And interestingly enough, he won both of those when he was in Columbus. And part of the analysis says on how awards given out is the Atlantic Division seems to be the preferred division, except if you're a Florida team. So Florida getting snubbed a little bit here, not winning the Vezina when they could have. Bobrovsky did get the Conn Smythe Trophy as the most. No, wait a minute. That's not right. Oh, that's a different year. Sorry. No, never mind. Bobrovsky did not get the Conn Smythe. We all know that went to Connor McDavid, another Connor. Connor. But Bobrovsky in Florida did win the Stanley Cup. There doesn't seem to be a lot of correlation between Stanley Cup and Vezina. But yeah, there could be a little bit of still a snub towards Florida here by giving it to Winnipeg. The Western Conference, this is their 6th Vezina in 31 award years, 6 and 31. So it's hard to argue, it's nice to see that there's a goaltender way out there on the West Coast that might actually be decent. The 2013 win by Connor Hellebuyck. I did argue in the other one that should have gone to Corey Crawford in Chicago that year. And I'm sorry. That's Bobrovsky's 2013 win. I'm all over the place. Maybe I should start over. Let's keep going. If you're still with me, hopefully this is making sense to you. So it's Bobrovsky's win in Columbus in 2013 that I thought should have gone to Corey Crawford in Chicago. And the 2020 Connor win could have gone to Andrei Vasilevsky with Tampa Bay, who did win the Stanley Cup and the Conn Smythe. But again, that's another Florida team in the Atlantic Division that doesn't seem to get maybe some of the respect they deserve. And there you go. So the winner of the Vezina Trophy awarded by the club GMs is Connor Hellebuyck of the Winnipeg Jets. The 6th Vezina Trophy for the Western Conference in 31 years. All right. Next up is the Jim Gregory GM of the Year Award, as awarded by the GMs, the NHL execs, print and broadcast media. We have a back-to-back winner, Jim Nill of the Dallas Stars. It's his second award. And like I said, Dallas has won it 2 years in a year. 2 years in a row. This award has only been around for 15 years now, and it's the second back-to-back win. Lou Lamoriello with the Islanders won in 2020 and 2021. Now, those are the same 2 years that Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup. Then back-to-back years, 2020, 2021. But even though they won the Stanley Cup in back-to-back years, potentially could have gotten the Vezina Trophy. We don't like Florida teams when it comes to awards, and so Tampa Bay didn't get it. Now, between the back-to-back for Lou Lamoriello and the back-to-back for Jim Nill was Joe Sakic in Colorado, but he had won the Stanley Cup. So he won the Stanley Cup, and he got the award. Okay. So there are, this one is a little different. One is a little strange. The 9th win for the Western Conference in 15 award years. So you could probably actually say maybe the bias is going the opposite way when it comes for GMs. The Jack Adams Award, which is for the coach, only 3 times, 3 out of 15, I mean, that's 20%, goes to the same team. In 2010, Phoenix, 2012, St. Louis, and 2018, Vegas, and all Western Conference teams. So talking about bias, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it could be, but maybe there's a little bias towards the Western Conference in this one award. Of course, nothing like the Vezina, 6 out of 6 and 25, as opposed to 9 and 6. Anyhow, no, I can't let go of the Vezina. You guys know it. I can't I can't let go of that. I'm going to try to for the rest of this podcast, but I'm not going to let go of it. Okay, we move on to the Mark Messier Award. Mark Messier is the determiner. The Mark Messier Award is for leadership on and off the ice. This year's winner, Jacob Trouba with the New York Rangers. The good news about this award is that a team that has not previously won it wins it. And the Rangers are one of those teams that I think really does get the short end of the stick. First of all, they're not in the Atlantic. And they've won a huge percentage of objective awards, but not subjective. So here you go. So that's the good news about this award. The Metropolitan has only half the wins of the Atlantic, 6-3. Again, this has only been around for 18 award years. It's 9-9 between the conferences, so that's pretty even. 6-3 in the Atlantic, 6 for the Atlantic, 3 for the Metropolitan. So anyway, Congratulations, Rangers and Jacob Trouba. An update on the NHL Foundation Award. It was discontinued. I didn't pick that up in doing the limited amount of investigation I did since it hadn't been awarded in a couple of years. I just kind of I just did my analysis and went on. But it was discontinued starting with the 2017-2018 season, with the monies that were allocated to it being redirected to the King Clancy Award because it's very similar. The NHL Foundation Award was with regard to enriching lives, and King Clancy, leadership on and off the ice. So that's the NHL Foundation Award, no longer given out. The 2016-2017 season was the last time. Okay, moving on. Ted Lindsay, the most outstanding player as determined by the Players Association. You expect this to be fairly even between conferences, at least reasonable. You expect them to, since it's with the Players Association and it's the most outstanding player, it'd be hard to argue their who they pick. I went through all the analysis. This year's winner, Nathan MacKinnon with Colorado. The second win for Colorado, the other one was in 2001 with Joe Sakic. Joe Sakic, great player, hated seeing him on the ice because I didn't pull for Colorado. Nathan MacKinnon also wins the Hart Trophy, most important player, whatever, determined by the media. Not the Art Ross, the most points. We'll get to that later. This does continue the trend. 22 out of 30, now 23 out of 31, with the Hart and the Ted Lindsay going to the same player. With stats like that, why are we having two? I know the Players Association wants to give out their award, and the media wants to give out their award. But seriously, the same person? The Ted Lindsay and the Art Ross go to the same player 18 to 30 times, but not this year because the winner was with Tampa Bay. And we have to diss the Florida teams in the Atlantic Division. Not that there are Florida teams in the other divisions, but hey, it's notable that they're in the Atlantic, which seems to win so many awards, and Florida teams don't get to participate in a lot of that, even though I did the analysis. Tampa Bay has won a couple of Stanley Cups. Florida's now won one. But good luck on the award side of things. Again, this with Colorado winning this, the Western Conference now has 11 of 31. So the Eastern Conference has 20. So that percentage isn't the best, but it is what it is. Moving on. The NHL Broadcasters Association have one solo award, the Jack Adams. They have two shared, Jim Gregory and King Clancy, which we already talked about the Jim Gregory, and King Clancy is coming up next, but we'll talk about the Jack Adams now, the coach who contributed most to team success. This year, the winner, Rick Touche, I think that's right, with Vancouver. It's Vancouver's third win of this award. They won it in 92 and 2007. It is rare for this to be awarded to the Stanley Cup winner. Interestingly enough, the first year of the award, 1974, it did go to the Stanley Cup winner, Philadelphia. It also went to the Stanley Cup winner in 1977 and 2004, Montreal and Tampa Bay. Oddly enough, a Florida team. This is the fifth time in 31 years that the Pacific has won it. Calgary's won it twice, Vancouver's won it twice, and Vegas. Vegas in their short career has won this award. But puts them in the minority of teams in the Pacific Division that have won it. And only 11 wins for the Western Conference in 31 years. Wow, the same number as the Ted Lindsay. I guess there's no outstanding players or coaches in the Western Conference that won 12 of 30 Stanley Cups, but I guess they're just getting lucky. So that's the Jack Adams. We move on to the Professional Hockey Writers Association that have 7 solo awards and 2 shared, the Jim Gregory and the King Clancy. The Jim Gregory we talked about above. And the King Clancy, leadership on and off the ice, similar to the Mark Messier Award. The winner, Anders Lee, with the New York Islanders. It's the 3rd win for the Islanders, 1989 and 2001. It's the 7th win for the Metropolitan in 31 award years, and ties them for last with the Central. The Atlantic has won it 9 times and the Pacific 8. So this one is pretty well spread around. Yeah. So, you gotta like that. Congratulations, Anders Lee. And back to the Connor story. The Bill Masterson Award, awarded by the Professional Hockey Writers Association for player perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. The winner, from Arizona, doesn't have a team anymore, Connor Ingram. Congratulations, Connor. It's the first win for any team that is in Arizona, Phoenix or Arizona. The 9th win for the Western Conference, leaves it 1 short of the Metropolitan Division. So 9 wins for the conference, 10 for the Metropolitan Division, 12 for the Atlantic. So the entire conference hasn't won it as much as one division in the Eastern. Player perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. Congratulations, Arizona and Connor Ingram. And the Calder is next, the best rookie. Starting at the 90-91 season, they have to also be under 26. The winner is Connor Bedard with Chicago. It's Chicago's 10th win overall, 1936, 38, 55, 60, 70, 83, 91, 2008, 2016. Starts to sound like that Johnny Cash song. I got it one piece at a time, and it didn't cost me a dime. The best rookie, yet another center. Rare for the Calder to go to anything other than a forward. Not always. Dominic Hasek. No, not Dominic Hasek. Anyway, go listen to the other podcast. It's not part of my notes, but another center. The Central Division has 10 wins and 31 award years. It does this award for the Central does give it a 2 award lead over the Atlantic and Metropolitan, both with 8, and the Pacific has 3. And 31 years, the Pacific has 3. I guess rookies don't play in the Pacific Division. And kind of a modifier to that, 1 win each to Atlanta and Quebec. Atlanta played in the Patrick, which became the Metropolitan, and Quebec played in the Adams, that became the Atlantic. So I guess technically the Atlantic and Metropolitan have 9 to the Central's 10, and the Pacific 3. Which is, as far as a conference standpoint goes, it's 18-13, which actually is pretty good. Kind of backing up just a little bit, given the number of years that the teams have been in the league, it looked somewhere like around, I think it was 73%, that if the Western Conference was for this time period for 30 years, if they if they had about 73% of the awards that the Eastern Conference did, that would be about right, because not all of the teams have been around for as long. So I did my normalization on that. 31 award years and 18 to 13, not too bad. Not too bad. I mean, it's not going to be perfect anytime. Just have to start wondering. There's a lot of awards where the Central really kind of doesn't win. This one is the Pacific that doesn't necessarily win it. It's weird that way. But moving on, the Conn Smythe Trophy, the MVP of the playoffs, going to the third straight award, going to someone named Connor McDavid, and a different Connor, the third different Connor. It's the fifth award, Conn Smythe, for Edmonton. It's the first time they've won it when they didn't win the Stanley Cup. The Conn Smythe rarely goes to the losing team of the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it has. It was served 6 times in the entire history of the Conn Smythe Award. Twice in this 31 award years, the 30 years that I did the analysis for, then add one. Previously in 66, it went to Detroit goaltender over Montreal, who won. And 68 went to St. Louis goaltender over Montreal. And in 76, it went to Philadelphia, but a right wing over Montreal. Must not like Montreal. And then in 87, a goaltender for Philadelphia instead of going to Edmonton, who won the Stanley Cup. And then 2003, J.S. Giguère, goaltender for the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, over New Jersey, who won the Stanley Cup. But they just can't help this year, Connor McDavid, they just can't help it. I think all year, was Connor McDavid going to win the Stanley Cup? Was Connor McDavid going to win the Stanley Cup? Was Connor McDavid going to win the Stanley Cup? I can't tell you how many times. I mean, it just seemed like that's what the NHL wanted. They didn't get it, so instead of him getting the Stanley Cup, he gets the Conn Smythe Trophy. In the finals, Edmonton did score 23 goals to Florida's 18, but they lost 4 games. Ergo, Florida won. Connor did have 3 goals, 8 assists. So of his 11 points, he was involved in about half the goals for Edmonton. In the playoffs, he had 34 assists, which was the most. He had 42 points, which was the most. And Zach Hyman with Edmonton had the most goals, 16. In the end, Edmonton did score 21 more goals than they gave up in the playoffs. Florida was second with scoring 11 more. They gave up about the same number of goals, 65 for Edmonton and 62 for Florida. Edmonton did play 1 more game than Florida. Edmonton did have 3 players with more points than any Florida player, and then 2 were tied with Florida's highest. They only had 6 players in double figures. Florida had 9. Both went 4-1 in the first, 4-2 for Florida, 4-3 Edmonton in the second. And then the conference finals, 4-2 for both of them. Florida played 3 overtime goals. They were all in the conference finals against the Rangers. They went 1-2. Interestingly enough, it was games 2, 3, and 4. They lost overtime in games 2 and 3, won in game 4. Edmonton was 2-1 in overtime in the playoffs. They lost in overtime to LA, and then they won against Vancouver and Dallas. So their 3 games were against 3 different teams versus Florida's was all against the Rangers. You might want to take a look at that. They had to beat the President's Cup team, really good team, and my Jonathan Quick. Interestingly enough, Nikita Kucherov with Tampa Bay won the Art Ross Trophy. Bringing this up because that's the most points. He did not win the Ted Lindsay nor the Hart, most outstanding player, most valuable player to the team. So they gave the Conn Smythe Trophy to the person who got the most points in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it matters then, but not with the Ted Lindsay or Hart Trophy. So sometimes having those points means something, and sometimes it doesn't. Especially if your name is Connor McDavid. And so there you go. No analysis on the divisions because generally it's who wins the Stanley Cup. In this 31 award years, the Conn Smythe went to 2 Western Conference teams. And when it did not go to the Stanley Cup. Yeah, maybe you want to call that bias. Maybe, I don't know. But twice. There you go. Doesn't happen very often. All right, Conn Smythe. So the Professional Hockey's Writers Association awards continuing on with the Frank Selke Best Defensive Forward. Best Defensive Forward. Congratulations, Alexander Barkov with Florida. The second win for Florida and for Barkov, 2021. The other win for Florida and Barkov. His 2 wins sandwiches, Boston Bergerons. Second time he got 2 consecutive wins. He's got 6 total. Twice he went back-to-back in 2020 and 2023, and Barkov was on either side of him. So in the last 4 years, it's gone to 2 players. He also won it in 2014 and 2015 and 2017. Interestingly enough, he won it in 2012 and 2014, which are the 2 years that the LA Kings won the Stanley Cup playing defense. The Selke Award, Best Defensive Forward, 2012, 2014. The Atlantic now has won 17 Selke trophies in 31 award years. The Atlantic, just that division. I guess I should be happy that the award didn't go to Boston, Buffalo, or Detroit. Boston has won it 6 times. Detroit's won it 7 just in this 30-year or now 31-year award year. 17 out of 31 to the Atlantic Division. You guys should be ashamed of yourselves. There have been 45 award years. 1977-78 season was the first season with this award. And in that previous 14 years, the Atlantic won 9 times, the Pacific or the Metropolitan and Central won it 3, and the Pacific 0. So overall, in 45 years, in 45 award years for the Selke Trophy, the Atlantic has won it 25 times. 25 times out of 45 years. Ridiculous. Metropolitan has won it 9, the Central 8, and the Pacific 3. Next up, by the Professional East Coast Hockey Writers Association, is the Hart Trophy, which goes to Nathan MacKinnon of Colorado, just like the Ted Lindsay Award and just like the Ted Lindsay Award. It's the second time for Colorado, Sakic in 2001. They've now won that allows this. This is 5 wins for the Central in the 31 award years, 12 for the Western, which means 19 for the Eastern. Overall, the Atlantic has won it. 12 for the Western. 12 for the Western. So overall, The Atlantic has won it 15, and the Metropolitan 17, the Central 6, and the Pacific 17. So 71%, 32. The West is winning 71% of what the East is. 32 for the East, 23 for the West, which isn't too bad. 19 for the East, 12 for the West. Moving on. James Norris, greatest all-around defensive player. This year's winner, Quinn Hughes with Vancouver. Congratulations, Quinn, in Vancouver. It's the first ever win for Vancouver. It's the 14th win for the Western Conference in 31 award years, which ties them with the Atlantic Division. 14 award years, 14 awards for the Western Division, and 14 for the Atlantic Division. 14 for the Western Conference and 14 for the Atlantic Division. The Metropolitan has won it 3 times and the Central 8. For the Pacific, 6. Overall, the Atlantic has won it 29 times, with the Metropolitan 10, the Central 8, and the Pacific 8. So let's add that up. So 26 times it did not go to the Atlantic, and 29 times it did. Now, granted, it's been around for a while, and the Atlantic Division has been around, and for their teams have been around for the longest average, but still. Moving on. I would just say 17 wins for the East, 14 for the West is in of itself is not bad. Actually, pretty kind of a high percentage for the West, but 17 or 14 for the Atlantic out of 31 years. Really? They've got the best offensive player, the best defensive forward, got all the best players, but you know what? What they're not doing is winning everything every year. So come on, guys. Next up, the Lady Byng, sportsmanship, gentlemanly conduct with high playing ability. And speaking of sportsmanship, I guess we can't give it to the Professional Hockey Writers Association. Can't give them an award for sportsmanship, given how skewed they are towards the Atlantic Division. All right, back to regular programming. The winner of the Lady Byng, Jacob Slavin with Carolina. The third win for Carolina, the second for Slavin, 2021 again. I almost wanted to go back and check to see if 2024 and 2021, everybody got the same awards. But hey, I don't think that's the case. It's the 7th win for the Metropolitan in 31 award years. Overall, the Atlantic has won it 40 times, the Metropolitan 24, the Central 7 for the Central Division, and the Pacific 16. Looking at it since 1981, which is, a little more reasonable than all time because a lot of these teams weren't around before. Most of the original teams are in the Atlantic. Not all, but most. Since 1981, the Atlantic has won 19, the Metropolitan 11, the Central 7, and the Pacific 16. So the Central Division really seems to be ignored for this one. I guess they don't think anybody in the Central Division exhibits sportsmanship, gentlemanly conduct, and a high playing ability. Joe Sakic. But hey, all those players that played for Arizona, Phoenix, jeez. Okay. So anyway, so that's all of the subjective awards. I didn't cover the objective awards because there's no bias there. They're given to players that meet specific criteria, the Jennings, the Art Ross, President's Cup, and so on. So a single award year, you wouldn't expect to have similar percentages, just being a one-off. And especially, what I was looking at was comparing the objective awards to subjective awards. that wouldn't really make sense in one award year because there's only 5 objective awards. I also don't really cover the Willie O'Ree Community Awards. I did see that there were 2, and I wasn't sure why there were 2. Some reason there's one for Canada and one for the U.S. I don't know, but anyway, I didn't cover that since they don't go to an NHL team or to players. I'm not really, the idea was what these awards are showing bias to teams or players, and so if there's an award that doesn't go to teams or players, well, it's not really, not really looking at that. So congratulations to the 2 winners, Toronto and El Segundo, I think. Toronto, Canada, and El Segundo, California, I think are where the winners are. None of the awards were won by LA, Nashville, or Seattle. So that's disappointing. Chicago and Arizona, 2 of the worst teams in the West, did get awards. 2 of the bottom 4 teams in the West got awards, but not LA, Nashville, Seattle. Whatever. In the Atlantic, 3 of the 4 top teams, 3 of the top 4 teams won awards. It skipped number 2 Boston. In the Metropolitan, all top 3 teams won awards. In the Central, all 3 top teams won awards, as did the bottom 2. And in the Pacific, only the top 2 teams won the awards, Vancouver and Edmonton. LA was 3rd. So that's the awards. Spread them around. There's some awards where when they start giving it to somebody, they can't help but give it to them again. The longer winded coverage of that, please see my last podcast. And for the Predators update, started to talk about this in the last podcast, but edited it out. So for the Predators update, we have from Tampa Bay, Steven Stamkos. Looking forward to that. Oh my gosh. No, he's a little bit of an older player, but oh my gosh, somebody other than a high skill guy other than Forsberg on the team. Holy cow. Thank you. That'd be great. He got a 4-year, $32 million deal. He had 81 points last year. Forsberg had 91. Yossi had 85. So that would be great. I mean, he would, if at 81, he would be the 3rd highest goal scorer on the team. It's a great pickup. Very excited about that. Also got forward Jonathan Marchessault from Vegas. 5-year, $27.5 million contract. He did win the Conn Smythe last year for Vegas. So that's a great signing. Also signed Brady Skjell from Carolina. 7-year, $49 million. So Stamkos is getting $8 million a year. Marchessault getting a little over $5 million, and Skjell getting $7 million. Apparently, the idea behind getting Skjell was to replace McDonough, who was traded. Get to that in a minute. And also they got goalie Scott Wedgwood, who was the backup in Dallas, 2-year, $3 million contract. The idea is that he'll back up Saros. The news was he would compete with Yaroslav Askarov, who was the 11th pick in the 2020 draft by Nashville. So Wedgwood and Askarov competing for the backup spot. I did notice that Lankinen, he's an unrestricted free agent, has not signed yet. So it doesn't look like the Predators are going to retain Lankinen, but I don't know. That's I can't find anything on that. They re-signed Saros. He had 1 year left on his contract, but they signed him to an 8-year, $61 million deal. Alexandre Carrier, defenseman, signed a 3-year, $11 million deal. Unrestricted free agents that were signed by other teams include Jarrett Anderson-Dolan, who used to play for LA, is now with Winnipeg. Anthony Beauvillier, who we picked up at the trade deadline to help us with the playoffs. He's now in Pittsburgh. Troy Grosenick is now at Minnesota. I forgot the E on that one, Minnesota. Kiefer Sherwood is now in Vancouver, and Jason Zucker is now with Buffalo. As of yesterday, didn't check today. I don't think anything has changed, but unsigned, unrestricted free agents are Wade Allison, Tyson Barrie, Liam Foudy, Gustavs Grigas, Jordan Gross, Kevin Lankinen, and Jasper Weatherby. Trade since the trade deadline, May 21st, defenseman Ryan McDonough was traded along with a 4th-round 2024 draft pick to Tampa Bay for a 2nd round in 2025 and the 7th round in 2024. June 23rd, forward Igor Afanasyev, goodness gracious, Afanasyev. Sorry, Igor, if you're listening, I'm really sorry. I should have looked that up and listened to how it was pronounced before coming in here. But he's now in San Jose, and we got forward Ozzy Weisblatt for that, forward for a forward. Ryan McDonough and a draft pick. We traded for 2 draft picks. June 25th, forward Jesse Kaiskinen and Tampa Bay's 2nd round 2024 draft pick. I didn't quite understand that verbiage. Went to Detroit for defenseman Andrew Gibson. June 29th, 2024 2nd round pick to Philadelphia for a 3rd rounder in 2024 and a 3rd rounder in 2025. And then also June 29th, a 4th round 2024 pick to the Rangers for 4th round 2024 pick and a 7th round in 2026. That moved the Rangers up 8 spots. So to move up 8 spots, they swapped with Nashville, and we got a 7th rounder in 2026. Hoo-yah. The minor leagues made a number of different trades to shore up that team. One thing that I did learn, I'll pass this on, is I've always heard 2-way, 1-way contract. Had no clue what they were talking about. I had an idea that was wrong. But a 2-way contract means that they can be sent down to the minors, and they get paid depending upon where they're playing. So if they're playing for the main club, they get paid one thing. If they go to the minors, they get paid something else. A 1-way contract, they get paid the same regardless of where they're playing. All right. So that's the Predators update. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, and it turns out that there was an article in the New York Times back in January about this. So I looked at potential changes for the season, and it looks like there's a couple of small changes. I guess maybe one of the bigger ones is that you can challenge a penalty if the delay a game penalty if the puck gets cleared in the defensive zone by the defense. without it being touched by another player touching the glass. The coach can now challenge that, and a couple of other small changes. Yeah, so that was. But as far as the 3-point game per game system, that's as far as I know, it's not really being discussed. I think it's an interesting idea, given that sometimes normally you look at this sort of thing coming up to the playoffs when you're fighting for a playoff spot and you're trying to beat somebody, and then there's the 3-point game, right? Where since it goes to overtime, the losing team gets a point. So the winning team still gets 2, and the losing team gets a point. So there's 3 points now, but normally there's only 2, right? Because you win the game, you get 2. You win in regular time, you get 2 points. So the idea behind a 3-point system is that every game has 3 points. If you win in regular time, you get 3 points, not 2. And then if you win in overtime, you get 2. And if you lose in overtime, you get 1. So that way, every game has 3 points involved in it, not just the ones that go to overtime. I think that's a interesting idea. I like it. I don't know that it really changes a lot, but I feel better about things. So what I did is I said, okay, let's just do a quick analysis. Let's look at the 2023-2024 season, and how would it have been different? How would it have been different if we have the 3-point system instead of the 2-point system, or the 2+1 system, whatever you want to call it, right? So the same teams would have made the playoffs. It would have been slightly different. The Rangers would still be the President's Cup winner. In the Atlantic, Tampa Bay and Toronto would have tied at 135 points. Toronto last season finished 3rd, so they were the divisional 3rd spot, with Tampa Bay being a playoff team, with a wild card team. In the 3-point system, Tampa Bay would have been the divisional 3, and Toronto would have been the first wild card, kind of swapping their position. And in the Metropolitan, same sort of thing. The Islanders and Washington would have been tied at 123 points, with the Islanders being the divisional 3 last year at 94 points. Washington had 91. But with the 3-point system, Washington would have been the number 3 seed in the Metropolitan, and the Islanders would have been the number 2 wildcard team. So Toronto and the Islanders would have been the wildcard teams. Tampa Bay would have played Boston, with Washington playing Carolina in the divisional first-round games. Then the Islanders would have played the Rangers, and Toronto would have played Florida in the first-round games. Tampa Bay did beat Boston 3 out of 4 games in the regular season, whereas Toronto lost all 4 games in the regular season. But that series, Boston-Toronto, did go 4-3 in the first round. So Tampa Bay could have had a better beat on Boston. Potentially, the Tampa Bay could have advanced and not Boston, the situation. Florida went 2-1 in the regular season against Tampa Bay, and 2-2 against Toronto, fairly similar, but they beat Tampa Bay 4-1 in the playoffs. That Florida result, I don't really see any reason why that would have been different. The Rangers went 3-1 against the Islanders in the regular season, and 2-2 against Washington, who they beat 4-0 in the playoffs. Don't really expect the Rangers to have done any different. And then Carolina split 2-2 against Washington, and 4-1 lost. But Carolina went 2-2 against Washington, and the Islanders. Carolina split their games 2-2 with Washington and the Islanders in the regular season, and they beat the Islanders 4-1 in the playoffs. So I don't think that would have been any different either way. So the only place Boston may not have advanced with Tampa Bay advancing. So Florida, Rangers, Carolina, all would have been the same, just whether or not Boston advanced. So probably not a whole lot different there. Just differences with the seeding. In the Central, interestingly enough, Winnipeg would have been the number one seed in the West, overtaking Dallas. Dallas would have been the Central number 2 seed. That would have been 156 points for Winnipeg to Dallas's 153. Versus in the other system, Dallas had 113 and Winnipeg 110. That difference comes up because Winnipeg had 6 more regular season wins, regular time wins, regulation wins. So they would have gotten an additional 6 points out of that. So that would have made up the being down 3 to being up 3. So that's pretty big deal there with Winnipeg being the number 1 team in the West. Doesn't affect the President's Cup. The Rangers still were ahead by 1 point. In the Pacific, the only change was that instead of Calgary and Seattle being tied at 81 points, Calgary getting the tiebreaker by having more wins, finishing 5th in the conference, neither team making the playoffs. Calgary would have been ahead of Seattle 113 to 109 with 4 more regulation wins. So the only thing in the Pacific was you wouldn't have to worry about the tiebreaker. In the playoffs, Winnipeg would have played Vegas instead of Colorado. Dallas would have played Colorado. And Winnipeg lost all 3 games against Vegas and won all 3 against Colorado, who they lost 1-4 in the playoffs. Winnipeg is a streaky team. I thought they were going to handle Colorado, and I guess their streaky losing kicked up. I don't think it would have mattered. Since they beat Colorado 3 times, they lost to Vegas, I think they still would have lost. Hard to say. Dallas went 1-3 against Colorado in the regular season and lost all 3 to Vegas, who they beat 4-3 in the playoffs. Hard to see them playing Dallas making, if Dallas played Colorado, that Dallas would have still advanced. The thing is, in the end, Dallas, Colorado, Vancouver, and Edmonton it would advance. So if Dallas and Colorado play each other, there would been a different team there, and I think that would have been Vegas. So you'd had Dallas, Vegas, Vancouver, and Edmonton. But anyway, overall, wouldn't have made I guess it would have made a big difference in how the seedings were and who you're playing. So I think it's an interesting concept. I personally would like to see it. I think just add a little bit more clarity to things, make the grounds a little bit even. Okay, well there you go. So that's my take on the 2024 NHL Awards to the hockey. The National East Coast Hockey Writers Association. But this year's awards kind of were not so Atlantic-centric. So good job there. Good job. Way to think outside your box. And so that's the 2024 awards. The Predators update, go Preds. Looking forward to the season. They play, if I remember right, they're playing LA and Seattle 3 times here in Nashville. So that's great. We're going to have to make sure we get those tickets. And then here's the 3-point game proposal. So nice little throw in there for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed. And thanks for listening. Congratulations to Jonathan Quick, my episode 32. Congratulations to all of the winners in the NHL Awards and to the Florida Panthers for the Stanley Cup victory. Thank you for listening. I'm Preston Proctor, and you've been listening to Predators Proclivity.